This is a reading from the Poem of the Man God, Volume 5, Episode 601. Death of Judas of Kerioth. The behavior of Mary towards Judas cancels Eve's bearing towards Cain. This was written on the 31st of March, 1944, Friday in Passion Week at 2 a.m. Here is my very painful vision in these early hours of Passion Friday, as it appeared to me while I was saying the prayers of the hour of Our Lady of Sorrows. In fact, I had thought that spending the night before my profession in the company of the Virgin of Seven Sorrows was the best preparation for the profession. I see Judas. He is alone. He is dressed in light yellow with a red cord round his waist. My internal warner informs me that Jesus has been captured a short time ago, and that Judas, who had run away after the arrest, is a prey to contrasting ideas. In fact, the Iscariot looks like a furious wild beast hunted down by a pack of mastiffs. Every breath of wind rustling among leaves, any noise in the streets, the gurgling of a fountain makes him start and turn round suspiciously and with terror, as if an executioner had caught up with him. He looks round with his head lowered, his neck twisted, rolling his eyes like one who wants to see but is afraid of seeing. And if a play of moonlight forms a shadow with a human appearance, he opens his eyes wide, jumps back, he becomes more livid than he normally is. He stops for a moment, and then runs away headlong, retracing his steps, slipping away along narrow streets, until another noise, another play of light, makes him stop or run away in a different direction. In his crazy running, he goes towards the center of the town, but the clamor of people makes him realize that he is near Caiaphas's house, and then, pressing his head with his hands and stooping as if those shouts were stones lapidating him, he runs away. And in doing so he runs along a lane that takes him straight towards the house where the supper was consumed. He becomes aware of that when he is in front of it, because there is a little fountain that trickles just there. The drops of water that fall into the small stone basin and the light whistle of the wind that, blowing along the narrow lane, produces a kind of repressed groan, must sound to him like the tears and the moaning of the betrayed, tortured master. He covers his ears with his hands in order not to hear, and runs away with his eyes closed in order not to see that door which he had entered with the master a few hours earlier, and from which he had come out to go and get the armed guards to arrest him. While running so blindly, he bumps against a stray dog, the first dog I have seen since I have had visions, a big, grey, hairy dog that moves to one side, snarling, ready to hurl itself upon the disturber. Judas opens his eyes and meets the two phosphorescent ones staring at him, and he sees the white, uncovered fangs that seem to be laughing in a diabolic manner. He gives a shriek of terror. The dog, that perhaps takes it for a cry of menace, rushes upon him, and they both roll in the dust. Judas underneath, paralyzed by fear, the dog on top of him. When the animal leaves the prey, perhaps considered unworthy of a struggle, Judas is bleeding because of 2 or 3 bites, and his mantle is badly torn. One bite has injured Judas's cheek, exactly where he kissed Jesus. His cheek is bleeding, and the blood stains the neck of Judas's yellowish garment. It forms a sort of collar of blood, soaking the red cord that fastens the garment round the neck, making it even redder. Judas, touching his cheek with his hand and looking at the dog that is going away, but he looks at it from the opening of a door, whispers, "Beelzebub," and with a fresh shriek he runs away, chased by the dog for some time. He runs as far as the little bridge near Gethsemane. Here, either because it was tired of chasing him, or because it was rabid and the water turns it away, the dog abandons the prey and goes back snarling. Judas, who had rushed into the torrent to get stones to throw at the dog, when he sees it go away, looks around and realizes that the water reaches halfway up his calves. Without bothering about his garments, which are getting wetter and wetter, he bends down as far as the water and drinks, as if he were parched by fever, and he washes his cheek that is bleeding and must be painful. In the light of daybreak he climbs out of the gravel bed on the other side, as if he were still afraid of the dog and did not dare to go back towards the town. He walks a few meters and finds himself at the entrance to the Garden of the Mount of Olives. He shouts, "No, no!" when he recognizes the place. Then, I do not know through which irresistible force, or through which satanic criminal sadism, he proceeds in that place. He looks for the place where Jesus was arrested. The earth of the path trampled on by many feet, the grass ruffled at a certain point, and some blood on the ground, perhaps Malchus's, make him understand that there he pointed out the innocent to the executioners. He looks and looks, and then he utters a hoarse cry and jumps backwards. He shouts, "That blood! That blood!" and he points it out to whom? with his hand stretched out and his forefinger pointed to it. In the increasing light, his face is ashen and ghastly. He looks like a madman. His eyes are wide open and shiny, as if he were delirious. His hair, ruffled by his running and his terror, looks shaggy on his head. His cheek, which is swelling, twists his mouth into a grin. His tunic, torn, covered with blood, wet, muddy, because the dust that had stuck to the wet cloth had become mud, makes him look like a beggar. His mantle, which is also torn and muddy, hangs down from one shoulder like a rag, and he gets caught in it when, continuing to shout, "That blood! That blood!" he steps back as if that blood had become a sea that rises and submerges. Judas falls back and hurts the back of his head against the stone. He moans with pain and fear. "Who is it?" he shouts. He must have thought that somebody had made him fall to strike him. He turns round, terrified. There is no one. He stands up. Blood is now dripping also at the back of his neck. The red circle widens on his garment. It does not fall to the ground, because there is not much of it. His garment absorbs it. The red halter now seems to be already around his neck. He walks. He finds the traces of the little fire lit by Peter at the foot of an olive tree, but he does not know that it is Peter's work, and he must think that Jesus was there. He shouts, "Away! Away!" and with both hands stretched out in front of him, he seems to be driving back a ghost that torments him. He runs away and ends up just against the rock of the agony. By now, daybreak is clear, and one can see well and immediately. Judas sees Jesus' mantle left folded on the rock. He recognizes it. He wants to touch it. He is afraid. He stretches out his hand and withdraws it. He wants and does not want, but that mantle fascinates him. He moans, "No, no." He then says, "Yes, by Satan, yes, I want to touch it. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid." He says that he is not afraid, but his teeth are chattering with terror, and the noise made above his head by a branch of an olive tree that is blown by the wind against the nearby trunk makes him shout once again, and yet he makes an effort, and gets hold of the mantle, and he laughs, the laughter of a madman, of a demon, a hysterical, broken, lugubrious, never-ending laughter, because he has overcome his fear, and he says so. "You do not frighten me, Christ. I am no longer afraid. I was so much afraid of you, because I thought that you were a god and a strong man. Now you no longer frighten me, because you are not God. You're a poor madman, a weakling. You did not know how to defend yourself. You did not reduce me to ashes. Neither did you read betrayal in my heart. My fears. What a fool! When you spoke, even yesterday evening, I thought you knew, but you knew nothing. It was my fear that gave you the tone of prophecy to your common words. You are nothing. You have allowed yourself to be sold, pointed out, caught like a mouse in its hole. Your power, your origin. Buffoon! Satan is the strong one, stronger than you. He defeated you. The prophet, the Messiah, the King of Israel. And you subjugated me for 3 years, with fear always in my heart, and I had to lie to deceive you subtly when I wanted to enjoy life. But even if I had stolen and fornicated without all the cunning I used to employ, you would not have done me anything. Faint-hearted, fool, coward, take this, take this, take this. I was not wrong in doing to you what I am doing to your mantle, to revenge myself for the time you kept me the slave of fear of a rabbit. Take this. Here, take this. At each take this, Judas bites the cloth of the mantle and tries to tear it. He rumples it with his hands, but in doing so he unfolds it, and the stains wetting it appear. Judas stops in his fury. He stares at those stains. He touches them. He smells them. It is blood. He spreads out the whole mantle. The impression left by the two hands stained with blood when Jesus pressed the cloth against his face is clearly visible. Ah! Blood! Blood! His! No! Judas drops the mantle and looks round. Also on the rock where Jesus leaned with his back when the angel comforted him, there is a dark mark of blood that is clotting. There! Blood! Blood! He lowers his eyes in order not to see, and he sees the grass all stained with the blood that has dropped on it, as it had been diluted by the dew. It looks as if it had just dripped. It is red and shines in the early sunshine. No! 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 I don't want to see it. I cannot look at that blood. Excuse me. Help! And he holds his throat with his hands and gropes about as if he were drowning in a sea of blood. Back! Back! Leave me! Leave me! Cursed! But this blood is a sea. It covers the earth. The earth. The earth. and on the earth there is no room for me, because I cannot look at that blood that covers it. I am the Cain of the innocent. I think that the idea of suicide entered his heart at this moment. Judas's face is frightening. He jumps from the terrace and runs away through the olive grove without going back to the way he came. He looks like one chased by wild beasts. He goes back to town. He envelops himself in his mantle as best he can, and he tries to cover his wound and his face as much as possible. He turns his steps towards the temple. But while going there, at a crossroad, he finds himself in front of the rabble who are dragging Jesus to Pilate. He cannot withdraw, because other people press him from behind as they flock to see, and, tall as he is, he dominates forcibly and sees. And he meets Jesus' eyes. They exchange glances for a moment. Then Jesus, tied and beaten, passes by, and Judas falls on his back as if he had fainted. The crowds trample on him pitilessly, and he does not react. He obviously prefers to be trodden on by the whole world rather than meet those eyes. When the deicide pack has gone by with the martyr, and the street is empty, he stands up again and runs to the temple. He bumps against and almost overthrows a guard on duty at the gate of the enclosure. Other guards run to prevent the frantic man from entering, but like a furious bull he routs them all. One of them, who clings to him to prevent him from going into the hall of the Sanhedrin where they are still gathered discussing, is seized by the throat, strangled, and thrown down the 3 steps, if not dead, certainly at the point of death. "I don't want your money. May you be damned," he shouts, standing in the middle of the hall, just where Jesus was previously. He looks like a demon who has come out of hell, bleeding, unkempt, in a state of delirious fury, slavering, his hands like claws. He shouts and seems to be barking, so shrill and hoarse is his howling voice. "I don't want your money, you cursed ones. You have ruined me. You have made me commit the gravest sin. I am cursed, like you. I have betrayed innocent blood. May that blood and my death fall upon you. Upon you! No! Ha!" Judas sees the floor stained with blood. "Even here is there blood? Even here? Everywhere! His blood is everywhere! How much blood has the Lamb of God to cover the whole earth like this without dying? And I have shed it. Through your instigation. Cursed, may you be cursed forever. Cursed be these walls. Cursed be this profane temple. Cursed the deicide pontiff. Cursed be the unworthy priests, the false doctors, the hypocritical Pharisees, the cruel Judeans, the sly scribes. May I be accursed. Curse me. Keep your money, and may it strangle your souls in your throats, as the halter strangles me." And he throws the purse in Caiaphas's teeth and goes away howling, while the coins tinkle, spreading out on the floor after striking Caiaphas's mouth and making it bleed. No one dare stop him. He goes out. He runs along the streets, and he fatally meets with Jesus twice again as he goes and comes back from Herod. He departs from the town center, taking the poorest lanes at random, and he ends up again at the house of the sufferer. It is all closed, as if it were abandoned. He stops. He looks at it. "The mother," he whispers, "the mother." He is undecided. "I have a mother as well, and I have killed a son of a mother. And yet I want to go in, to see that room again. There is no blood in there." He knocks at the door. He knocks again and again. The mistress of the house comes to open and half opens the door, ajar, and seeing the man so agitated and altered beyond recognition, she utters a cry and tries to close the door again. But Judas opens it wide with a push of his shoulder, and, knocking down the terrified woman, he goes in. He runs towards the little door that lets into the supper room. He opens it and goes in. A beautiful sunshine enters through the wide-open window. Judas breathes a sigh of relief. He proceeds. Everything is calm and silent here. The dishes are still as they were left. One understands that nobody has taken care of them. One might think that they are about to sit at the table. Judas goes towards the table. He looks whether there is any wine in the amphorae. There is. He drinks greedily out of the amphora itself, lifting it with both hands. Then he sits down and rests his head on his arms, folded on the table. He does not notice that he has sat just where Jesus was seated, and that in front of him there is the chalice used for the Eucharist. He remains still for some time, until his panting after so much running calms down. He then looks up and sees the chalice, and he realizes where he has sat down. He stands up as if he were possessed, but the chalice enchants him. A little red wine is still in the bottom of it, and the sun, shining on the metal, it looks like silver, inflames the liquid. "Blood! Blood! Blood! Also here! His blood! His blood! Do this in memory of me. Take this and drink it. This is my blood, the blood of the New Testament that will be shed for you. Ha! I'm cursed. I can no longer be shed for me to remit my sin. I do not ask to be forgiven because he cannot forgive me. Away! Away, there is no place where the Cain of God may find peace. Death! Death to me! He goes out. He finds himself in front of Mary, who is standing at the door of the room where Jesus left her. Hearing a noise, she has looked out, hoping perhaps to see John, who has been away such a long time. She looks as pale as if she had lost all her blood. Grief has made her eyes resemble even more those of her son. Judas meets those eyes that look at him with the same sorrowful, conscious knowledge with which Jesus looked at him in the street, and uttering a frightened "Oh!" he leans against the wall. "Judas," says Mary, "Judas, why have you come?" The same words as Jesus, and they are spoken with sad love. Judas remembers them and shouts. "Judas," repeats Mary, "what have you done? To so much love have you replied by betraying?" Mary's voice is a trembling caress. Judas is about to run away. Mary calls him with a voice that should have converted a demon. "Judas! Judas, stop! Stop! Listen! I am telling you in his name. Repent, Judas. He forgives." Judas has run away. Mary's voice, her appearance, have been the coup de grace, or rather of disgrace, because he resists her. He goes away precipitatedly. He meets John, who is going towards the house to get Mary. The sentence has been passed. Jesus is about to go to Calvary. It is time to take Mary to her son. John recognizes Judas, although there is little left of the handsome Judas of not long ago. "You here?" John says to him with obvious disgust. "You here? May you be cursed, you killer of the Son of God. The Master has been condemned. Rejoice if you can, but get out of the way. I'm going to get the mother. Do not let her, the other victim of yours, meet you, you reptile." Judas runs away. He has enveloped his head in the tatters of his mantle, leaving only a small opening for his eyes. People, the few people who are not near the praetorium, avoid him as if they saw a madman, and that is what he looks like. He wanders about the country. Now and again the wind carries an echo of the clamor made by the crowds who follow Jesus, cursing him. Every time such an echo reaches Judas, he howls like a jackal. I think that he has really gone mad, because he continuously knocks his head against the low stone walls, or he has become hydrophobic, because every time he sees a liquid, water, milk carried in a vessel by a child, oil dripping from a goat skin, he howls and shouts, "Blood! Blood! His blood!" He would like to drink at streams and fountains, but he cannot, because water seems blood to him, and he says so. "It's blood! It's blood! It is drowning me! It is burning me! I'm on fire! He gave me his blood yesterday, and it has become fire in me. May I be accursed, and you, too!" He goes up and down the hills around Jerusalem, and his eyes are irresistibly attracted towards Golgotha, and twice, from afar, he sees the procession wind uphill. He looks and howls. It is now on the top. Judas also is on top of a little hill covered with olive trees. He has gone in by opening a rustic paling as if he were the owner, or at least well acquainted with the place. I am under the impression that Judas did not have much consideration for other people's property. Standing upright under an olive tree on the edge of a terrace, he looks towards Golgotha. He sees the crosses being erected, and he realizes that Jesus has been crucified. He cannot bear to see or hear, but his mental derangement, or an act of witchcraft by Satan, make him see and hear as if he were on the top of Calvary. He looks and looks like one bewitched. He struggles. "No, no, don't look at me. Don't speak to me. I cannot bear it. Die, die, you cursed one. Let death close those eyes that frighten me, that mouth that curses me. But I also curse you, because you did not save me." His face is so troubled that one cannot look at it. Two fine streams of slaver run down from his howling mouth. The cheek that was bitten is livid and swollen, and so his face looks twisted. His sticky hair, his very dark beard that has grown on his cheek during those hours, make his face look dismal. And his eyes, they roll, are squint and phosphorescent, the eyes of a real demon. He tears away from his waist a cord of thick red wool that encircles it 3 times. He tests its solidity by winding it round an olive tree and pulling it with all his strength. It resists. It is solid. He chooses a suitable olive tree. Here it is. This one, protruding beyond the terrace, with its ruffled foliage, is all right. He climbs on the tree. He fastens a noose solidly to the strongest branch hanging out over the empty space. He has already tied a slip knot. He looks at Golgotha for the last time. He then puts his head into the slip knot. He now seems to have 2 red necklaces round the bottom part of his neck. He sits on the terrace. Then with a jerk he lets himself slip into the empty space. The knot squeezes his throat. He struggles for some moments. He rolls his eyes strangely. He becomes black with suffocation. He opens his mouth. The veins of his neck swell and become black. He kicks the air 4 or 5 times in his last convulsions. Then his mouth opens and his dark, slobbery tongue hangs out. His eyeballs remain uncovered, protruding, showing the whitish globe stained with blood. The irides disappear in the upper part. He is dead. The strong wind that has risen with the impending storm makes the macabre pendulum swing and whirl like a horrible spider hanging from the thread of a cobweb. The vision ends thus, and I hope I shall soon forget all this, because I can assure you that it is a dreadful vision.